in a couple of minutes, we will be having Jamey join us. But I was trying to reflect on what John was saying, and I'm really embarrassed. Means, like, what am I doing? Means to think about gravity and just think about how to bring it out to everyday elements through the kids' learning perspective. I totally missed my boat in the last couple of weeks to keep on thinking on what I should be thinking. What was I thinking? Means I think everybody is right now peering out of their windows and contemplating a lot, and I have been doing that a lot too. And one thing is for sure, I just keep on looking at the stuff that I have in my house, and now I'm thinking, why did I even buy that stuff? Means it's I'm not saying there's just junk around me right now, but not all of them fall in the essential or even semi-essential right now. I don't know, they were just there because I want to just compete with my neighbors. But I think it's actually giving me a little bit element of trying to understand right now what I really value, or going forward what I should be really valuing, not evaluating, valuing what stuff makes me, what is my identity, what is my family identity, what is our business, our studio identity, what we should be doing specifically going forward. Means we as a studio pivoting from the good design is good business kind of an element to understand, and somehow we were pretty strongly considering that it finally comes down to the purposefulness, the meaningfulness of design, not just from an artistic sense, but from the usefulness, the usability, a sense of what is it really going to derive the benefit for the user. And somehow you have to, when I say you, the onus will be on the designer or the design studio to put the onus in understanding what does the end person need, and then what does the society, not just the culture, the society and the ecosystem need from you. And now we all have to be more and more or level cognizant in that, because one thing I still remember from my childhood is is the notion of how I would like to summarize that is saying is we all have to beware the cost of cheap labor. It's not just the cheapness of the product, but even the way it is done, right? Means, as we always say, it is not products. It is not just what it looks like. It is not just what it works like. It is also how it is crafted. It is also how it is built. So it's not just the two elements that we always hear from Steve Jobs, looks like and works like, but there is happening elements behind the curtain too, about how are you crafting it with an onus towards ecosystem and the way you're going to use or misuse the local resources of that region over there, and also how it's going to be built, either a batch production or I would say a volume production, and how you bring out those resources together. And that pulls out the entire equation of how to make sure we are looking at the products and the products eventually, not all of them, but most of them falling in the essential part of the economy, right? Means, as I said at 12 o'clock when we started, it is a shame right now to see that we all are buying only the essential things, and that's crippling our economy. So something is inherently not working into action. So all these elements of looks like, works like, crafted like, and built like, all those things have to be thought together as such for the longevity of it also. It means that the robustness of a product now, I think, when I say product, it can be any object, right? It can be service, it can be digital GUI also. When you talk about an utensil or an equipment or any widgets as such, how do you think about not just the end use, but now how to have the repeatability of use as such? Because suddenly we are more than, I would say, ever cognizant of those limitations from the world of ecosystem too. So I think it's time to welcome our third speaker. Jamey, you can unmute yourself and you can have your video on. Awesome. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Yourself?
Oh, I'm just enjoying my time. This is like, I look forward to conversations like this and just learning and just blowing my mind about the way we look at things, the way other individuals are looking at things, and how they are forming their decisions, and how they are guided by their principles too. So I think all of us know and have read your bio as such. But before we go into the details about the topic, Do you want us to share with our audience your, let's say, personality? What do you do for fun? How are you keeping yourself inspired in this COVID-19 states also?
Well, right now Jivik, I'm trying to spend a little bit of time staying physically fit. I think I've come to the mindset that we all probably, have some concerns about this, COVID-19. And to the extent that we can try to, maintain fitness and cardiovascular, activity, it probably, serves to benefit the crowd, if you will, kind of the herd mindset. So I've
Are
been
you,
running.
yeah. So are you running for election? 2020 is back over there. Should we vote for you in November?
Say that again.
Are you running for election? There is 2020 behind you in big kind of letters. Are you running for any seat? Are we going to vote for you? What is the 2020 there for?
So, so 2020, that's my New Year's resolution. And there's 4 goals that are embedded in 2020. So the first 2 represents my goal to run 2 half marathons. And I ran my first last Sunday. The second 2 represents to run 2 full marathons.
Awesome.
And the first 0 is no soda pop for the year. And the second 0 is no alcohol for the year. So somebody looks at 2020, they see something completely different than the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I was going to give you my vote, but that's pretty interesting. No soda and no alcohol. Are you doing good? Are you still being?
Well, and the thing of it is, my favorite drink is a rum and Coke.
Awesome.
So yeah, I have not had a pop or alcohol since December 31st.
Man, keep at it. Don't let anything else take it down. That industry, by the way, the alcohol industry is at 55% growth rate right now. So nothing will happen to them if you don't buy a bottle here and there. But that's pretty impressive. Staying fit and having goals as big as 2 marathons and 2 half marathons in one single year. That's hats off to you. That's pretty amazing. But I think how you are investing into not just the mental health, but the physical health, which has been a part of our, let's say, discussions throughout the afternoon is, it's no matter what now, it has made sure that we have to look at exercising and not just steady state, I think, but a little bit more the interval training as such, which is there for the cardiovascular tempo status as such. So that's pretty amazing. So I think I believe we have you have some slides to share.
Yeah.
We jump into that and then we can come back and have a conversation and Q&A session. Awesome. We can see your screen, Jamey.
Okay, and you can just see one slide at a time.
Yeah, you can. And if you can also explain what is Michigan Virtual through your own words, that will be pretty good too.
Yeah. So Michigan Virtual has been around since 1998. We were actually created as a nonprofit by the state of Michigan, actually the Economic Development Corporation, initially to work on workforce development issues and try to leverage the power of the internet to deliver education and training services. Since around 2000, we've really been focused as an organization on Michigan's K-12 community. And I'm excited to join the panel today to talk a little bit about the work that we do. Let me just talk a little bit more about myself. I mentioned that I run marathons. I also am really active in hiking and backpacking and mountain climbing. The picture on the left there is a photo on top of a mountain called Gannett Peak, which is the high point in the state of Wyoming. And that's one of my older brothers. Not a real tall mountain, but from where you park your car to go climb the mountain and come back is, I think, a little over 40 miles. Wow. So it's really, really remote and pretty strenuous and considered to be one of the more difficult high points to get to. The picture in the lower right is actually 2 of my sons in Montana a couple summers ago, trying to summit the high point in that state. And Jivik, you can see they're pulling apart that boulder there. They're just incredibly strong children of mine. So
I know you are lucky, means you have some strong genes and you're passing on to your kids. I did not believe there were 1 Thor, but now I see 2 Thors over there. That's pretty amazing.
I'm also a big photographer and love to take pictures of the outdoor scenery. The picture on the left is from Yosemite National Park. And that big rock that you see is the largest piece of open-face granite in the world. It's called the El Capitan. That park is one of my favorite places to visit in the whole world. I spent a summer there when I was in college. And then the picture on the right is just a picture of a river here in the greater Lansing area that I took last fall. I'm also pretty handy with my hands and love to work with wood. I think I got a jackknife when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, and have created a tradition. I take our Christmas tree every year and I chop off the bottom of it and I carve something. And so you see the Santa Claus there on the left. That was from our 2015 Christmas tree. And then the picture on the right is just a stick that fell down that I carved a spoon out of. Just love doing things with my hand, and it's kind of a nice distraction from the crazy screen time that I encounter with my day job.
That
And
is
then I'm a rabid college.
going back. That's a fantastic way to look at the Christmas tree. It means you still retain a small part of it in your memories by carving something of the element that gave you joy for an entire month. That's fascinating. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun because we can look back and I'll carve, you know, an angel or a Santa Claus or a snowman and you know, they all have the date on the bottom, and so
Yeah.
it's neat.
Wow.
It's neat to look at the 2003 Christmas tree, and so I'm sure someday somebody way down the road from me will appreciate them as as family gifts.
Right now, I will let you know all of us are appreciating that immediately. Like, it's giving us plenty of ideas what to do with all these logs of wood right now lying around. So awesome. Please go ahead.
The last thing I wanted to share is just I'm a very avid college football fan, and I happen to cheer for Notre Dame, which is hard to do in the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And I always enjoy it when the Fighting Irish take on the Spartans or the Wolverines. So I thought, given that we're living through COVID-19 right now, that it might be beneficial for me to try to draw a little bit of a distinction, Jivik, from what we refer to as online learning and what I think should be appropriately titled right now emergency remote learning. And sometimes those terms are being used interchangeably. And we've got 1.5 million children in the state of Michigan that have been completely disrupted and not able to attend a physical school. We've thrown 100,000 educators kind of into the Arctic waters and asked them to do some heroic things, probably without a lot of training and support, and in many cases not the technology that they need. And so teachers and parents and kids are doing the best they can, but I really wouldn't call what we're doing right now. It's really kind of a giant Band-Aid to kind of get to the end of the school year. And I just want to draw a distinction because what we do with online learning has significantly more fidelity. We spend a lot more time creating the content, vetting those resources, training our teachers to teach in an online environment. And it's significantly different than kind of this emergency stuff. So I wanted to talk about innovation today and the future of education. And I often will use this quote just because I think it is so appropriate to where we are and the work that we have been doing at Michigan Virtual for now over 20 years. And I think it probably is fair to say that over 100 years ago, many people couldn't envision the combustion engine and what it might be able to do for human transportation. And I think often many of us have a hard time envisioning what education would look like or could look like outside of the traditional environment that I think almost all of us, experienced firsthand. And so I wanted to use this just as kind of a more of a reference point than anything else. And then because we're talking about online learning, I thought it might be beneficial just to kind of do a 30,000-foot overview of the kind of programs that are out there today. So on the vertical axis, you'll see full-time to supplemental, and it's intended to be kind of a scale there. There are kids in the state of Michigan today that go to school 100% online that never physically go to a building. And those schools are typically called cyber schools. Oftentimes they're connected to for-profit entities that operate those on a fee that they're contracted by an authorizer that could be a district or a college or a university. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the supplemental programs where a student goes to Mumford High School and maybe they don't teach Latin and there's an opportunity to take that online. And then on the horizontal axis, you'll see the range from teacherless to instructor embedded or teacher led. And the space that we provide, the work that we do with student online courses is in that upper right-hand quadrant. I will tell you that there are some unfortunate situations, in my opinion, where I think there are students being exposed to the full-time teacherless solutions, which I know I don't think I could have survived as a student in that kind of environment. Now, for certain kinds of learning applications, it may be completely appropriate. So I'm into photography. I've
Yeah.
taken a number of online classes with no instructor, no ability to kind of raise my hand electronically and get support and assistance. But I think for most young people, they need that human connection. They need that support, that assistance. And so there's just two basic dimensions to talk about online programs. And then oftentimes people get confused about what online learning actually looks like. And I want to just draw the distinction between on demand and real time. So right now we're using technology that could easily facilitate learning. Many teachers are using Zoom around the world for that matter. And we've got people online right now engaged in this as a real-time activity. But if you post this online in a week and it becomes an on-demand resource, there's no opportunity to kind of participate and ask questions and engage as the participants today are able to do. So I just wanted to draw that distinction as well as in terms of real time versus on demand. It looks like you have a question, Jivik.
No, I just want to add, means I do not know whether you might be covering this or not. Right now, I have two kids in the house. They're doing their virtual school, their mandatory thing as such. It is pretty painful. Means I love my kids. I think I was always a good teacher, but it is exposing all the weak points that I had, my wife have in trying to understand how to break it down for them. And the teachers are doing their best over there, but just having kids now for the fifth week, consecutive week, they're still pretty okay. My kids are at that age where they still listen to the parents, but I can just feel the pain and understanding of how just they're just turning it overnight in different elements, and what would be the other people involved as an influencer or a stakeholder to understand teacher-led, teacher-less, or the online or on-demand part of it. So right now, what you're saying makes sense because regardless of a designer or engineer or a scientist, we people who have kids right now inside their house are going through the, I should not say pain, but yeah, why should I not be realistic? The pain of making sure they're not losing these few months of their lifetime, right? I mean, it's losing a birthday also is bad, but losing this amazing time of education is something that we should be really looking forward to. So that you are on the right context right now.
Yeah. You know, I said to a reporter a couple of weeks ago, if somebody had said 5 years ago that we're going to plan to have schools closed for 3 months and we're going to train everyone and we're going to inform the parents and we're going to make sure we have all the technology and all the tools and all the digital content, it still would have been a Herculean lift, even if we had 5 years notice. And the fact that we had days or weeks notice, there's no other way to describe this than just this is a panicked emergency. And I really feel for all the teachers. And it's just been amazing and inspirational to see the creativity and the ingenuity of teachers trying to do things that they've never done before to reach their children that they're responsible for teaching, and then the yeoman's work that parents are doing, because this is, let's face it, there's a whole lot of stress in the system right now. There's no doubt about it. So
I know I should not break you in your presentation kind of and flow, but as you mentioned about the innovation of the school and the teachers right now, that is really phenomenal. Means, and not just for algebra or mathematics. My kids go to Rochester Community Schools, Baldwin School. Their fitness education teacher, he has this amazing program. He has pitched every class against class and said everybody has to go around the block and earn miles. So every day you have to go out and start walking or running or bicycling. And the part is they all get to, the dashboard is your garage door. If you do 2 miles or 3 miles a day, you cut that kind of a printout and add onto your garage door. So as you're walking around the subdivision, you can see, means that their logo is a lion. So you can see the small lion heads on the garage door like, oh, that kid went 25. Dad, mom, we have to go around the block once more today. So there is an amazing competitive spirit, and kids are kids. Once they want to do it for their classroom, it's amazing. So literally in the morning, if the kids see somebody, some family walking, they push us out or mom out and say, we have to go and do 2-3 miles because our class has to win. So it's amazing that the kids are forcing their parents to walk out. And they told us that the kids, if they walk with the parents, they earn extra points. So parents have to go out too. So people are amazingly creative right now.
Yeah.
So
And,
now I will keep quiet and I will let you go with the flow.
no problem. No problem. And the reality is, I think we're all kind of crossing our fingers and hoping that some really good things come out of this downtime. And there actually will be some lessons learned and, opportunities to maybe continue some of those things into the future.
Yeah.
I also thought it would be beneficial just to kind of, again, at the 30,000 foot level, to describe the role that our organization has played. We are a very unique organization. We're not a for-profit entity. We're not a school. We're not a college. We're not a university. We're not a state agency. We're nimble and we're small, and we play a unique role in the marketplace in this world of online and blended learning. And we really do exist to be an experimental station, if you will, to do research, to learn best practices, and then ultimately try to teach people how to fish. And we've done that through three, very discrete roles. We've been a change agent. If you can imagine, back in 2000, when we were asked to begin offering online courses to middle school and high school students, there wasn't anybody in the system that was asking for those services. And I will tell you, just from an equity standpoint, back in 2000, 45% of our high schools did not offer a single advanced placement course. And those are really important learning opportunities for kids, especially those that want to go on and pursue post-secondary opportunities. And so there was significant promise that online learning was going to address some very, very real equity gaps that we had in our public school system. And if you think of some of our small rural districts that may have a graduating class of 80 students, and think that you're going to offer Latin or Mandarin Chinese, or other world languages, AP Physics. In some cases, you may not have a teacher trained to teach those content areas, but in others, the economics just wouldn't work. It's not feasible for a district to offer a section with 4 students. So we played that change agent role that evolved into the service provider role. Last year, we delivered a little over 30,000 online courses to middle school and high school kids. Wow. We worked with around 500 school districts in the state. And then this more recent role in the last 4 or 5 years has really been this capacity builder role. So I just wanted people to understand that there aren't any other organizations like us in the state. We are kind of unique in that regard. And then in terms of what we do, online courses for kids, again, at the middle school, high school level, online professional development and training for teachers, administrators, bus drivers, food service workers, literally, Jivik, anybody who works in the K-12 space. And then we're very fortunate to house a research institute that looks at best practices in the world of online and blended learning. And online learning has been around for a long time, but it's still in its infancy, and best practices are still being learned, and new technologies are starting to surface. New ways of doing things are starting to permeate the environment. And we've been really successful in developing really practitioner-based research that helps to inform not only the way we deliver our services, but to really help the entire sector move its game up and try to do a better job of quality. And I just will note that in the last 7 weeks, since COVID-19 hit and our schools have been closed, we have had 40,000 online course enrollments from teachers wanting to hone their skills. Wow. and learn something new about online or blended learning. So all available for free for Michigan educators. So that's a testimonial to the perseverance that teachers have to recognize they needed to hone their skills and come up with some new ways of reaching their kids. Wanted to outline 10 quick, and I'll do this very quickly, 10, I'll call them planning assumptions that really create the foundation for why we exist in the work that we do. And they're pretty simple. I think many of you probably could come up with these same list of 10 planning assumptions. We know that the system's not serving all kids. If you ask 100 high school kids one word to describe high school, you're going to hear boring maybe 45 or 55 times. That relevance. And I think John, the previous speaker, was trying to talk about how do you take everyday things in our life and connect them to learning so kids can learn really difficult concepts, but things, like gravity on a playground. I mean, those are really simple things to try to draw relevance to. This notion of human talent, we know the city, the state, the country that is best at educating their citizenry, does the best economically. And so that's no longer a secret. Everybody knows that. The economic achievement expectations that school districts around the globe are setting continually are going up. And then the school pressure on funding. We know that this has been an issue, and unfortunately it's likely to become more of an issue in the next 18 months to 2 years as we try to rebound from the horrific loss in tax revenue that's not going to go to support schools because the money's just simply not there. I've worked in K-12 education and educational technology for 30 years or so. I'm likely the only person in the state of Michigan who's worked at a local school district, an intermediate school district, and the State Department of Ed and never taught. But I've had this compelling belief that technology can help a good teacher teach and can help any learner learn. And we have yet to really fully realize the full benefit that technology can offer as a productivity gain in teaching and learning. We've made some administrative efficiencies, but not really getting into the teaching and learning side. Traditions, as we all know, are really, really strong in K-12 education. We used to have kids off in the summer so they could be in the fields and help pick crops. We know that that's no longer the case, but we continue to hold on to the traditions like that. The inequities in education are real. They've been there for decades. I think they've been exposed as it relates to digital access and technology during COVID-19 more than ever. And then just this core belief that technology can help is pretty central to the work that we do. And then an expectation that we need to be thinking about new models that personalize learning. So I'll just give you one example just to share with the participants today some of the thinking that we've been doing just to really just try to take off the lid and just think about what's possible during this crazy, crazy time. So everybody's familiar with Uber, a really, really sophisticated app that's very, very easy to use on your phone that matches a person with transportation needs with somebody who has a car and wants to make some extra money. Well, it's, it's in the afternoon and there may be a student right now in Traverse City who is having difficulty trying to figure out how to divide fractions. And what if we were able to use a platform like Uber, and we actually did reach out to Uber, we're waiting to get a response. But what if we could take that platform, instead of trying to facilitate transportation services, facilitate learning services, and a student in Traverse City could get on the app and identify what grade they're in and what their content area challenges are and what the lesson or unit they're working on. And maybe there's a teacher in Novi who right now at this very minute is willing to jump online and help that student in an environment like what we're dealing with right now in Zoom. Well, our system's really not set up to do with that in that kind of a delivery model because students typically go to a district. That district receives funding to support that student. So we're literally just trying to think about new models as we go forward. So I was asked to talk about the future of learning. I want to answer these 4 questions and I'll do it very, very quickly. But I'd like to challenge all of the participants to answer these questions in their own heads as I go through them. So where is learning today? What's the future of learning? What's most important as we go forward? And how do we get there? And I would say in terms of where learning is today, if you benchmark us or compare us against other sectors, like how we do business, how we access entertainment, how we shop, how we communicate, I would say education right now is in the very early stages of this disruption phase. And if you think of how every other sector of our economy has just been disrupted by technology, and in large part, that just hasn't happened. Interestingly enough, I think COVID-19 is likely going to accelerate a lot of that activity, but I think we're fairly early in on that disruption cycle, which we know is likely going to happen. So what's the future of online learning? Maybe all of you were expecting something really, really sophisticated and really, really fancy. My humble opinion, it's all about personalized learning. And when I say that, I'm not talking about personalized learning for 4th graders versus 3rd graders or boys versus girls. I'm talking about personalized learning that's based on your cognitive preferences, based on real research in the brain, and being able to serve up content in a format, in a style that's personalized to you as a human being that really maximizes your learning capabilities and strengths. And so that's where I think learning is headed. The only way I believe we're going to get there is by leveraging new technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive analytics, big data. How do we get there? I believe there's three core elements that we need. First of all, we just need to have a shared understanding that technology and data really can personalize teaching and learning and facilitate high-touch learning environments. I think oftentimes people think if it's high-tech, it's going to be teacherless. It's going to be without human relationships, and that's not anything that I'm proposing. The second thing I think we need is we need to be able to be a little bit more intentional about how we take risk and embrace innovation by developing and implementing new models. And then the third one is just this mindset that we've got to fail fast, we've got to learn even faster, and we've got to adjust, because every new model that we try isn't going to be perfected overnight. We're going to have to work at it. So that's a summary of where I think education is headed. I wanted to put this link up, Jivik, just because I wanted people to know that we have been extremely busy in the last 7 weeks trying to support Michigan schools. We've put online content out there. We've done a significant amount of training for teachers. We've put together some planning resources, even parent resources that they may find beneficial. Most notably, we've secured a statewide license around a social emotional learning app that's designed for students, parents, and teachers. We know that stress is not a good thing, and there's plenty of it during this environment. And that app is a resource free to all to maybe learn a little bit more about how you're dealing with stress, tips on what you can do to prevent stress, and maybe even be more of an advocate for your own mental health as you go forward, whether you're a child, a parent, or an educator, because we're kind of all struggling with this at the same time. And that's my presentation.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Really good. Can you go back to the screens where you had the 4 questions so people can just try to think about that as such? And that's pretty interesting to understand the context as such. And you're right. This remote learning, distance learning, online learning, we always had thought about this. But do you think as we go forward, at least in the US, would the traditional K-12 school systems, would they ever cease to operate as we know it? Would it pivot eventually to this completely new norm?
You know, schools play such an incredible role in our society, physical schools, those places of learning that we all experienced as young people. There are too many things that schools do, the social networking component, the extracurricular activities, just the custodial responsibility. I mean, you and your wife both work, and to have your children at a physical school during the day is relieving you of some daycare responsibilities. And so I really don't see schools in the United States, or for that matter, anywhere in the world, ceasing to operate. It would shock me if we ever got to that point. And I just can't see it. There's just too many other value propositions that they play in our society.
So I do not know offhand, maybe you might be knowing it. I think we don't do that, but some people still do homeschooling. What is the percentage of that in the US, if you have any idea of that? How many people still do homeschooling as such?
You know, I don't think there's really good data on that, because many people who homeschool don't necessarily report that they're homeschooling. I'm going to guess that it's somewhere between 3 and 5%, but you know, you could probably Google it. One of our participants, I'm sure, in the chat window could probably put that up. It's a relatively small percentage. I think the one thing that in talking to people that I've heard, and this is the pressure that I think is going to be placed on our schools in the fall, everybody is giving significant grace right now to our schools. They know that this is just completely disruptive. Nobody had planned for it. Nobody could have predicted it. And I don't think anybody's expectations are all that high. Yeah. I think if we encounter this in the fall or into the next school year, and schools aren't able to provide a little bit more fidelity in what they're doing,
Yeah.
I am fearful that people are going to leave and think about homeschooling that maybe a year ago never even remotely considered it. So that will be a competitive pressure point that I think school districts will have to weigh and evaluate.
That's, I think we got an answer from Dave Byron. He says about 2 million kids in the US might be on that homeschooling kind of an pattern. That's a pretty significant number. Thank you, Dave, for that. So what you mentioned is pretty interesting about not completely replacing the traditional school model, because I have to be honest over here. When I was going to school, when I was young, maybe elementary school, and how I see my kids right now going to school, they really miss school. And they tell in their own kind of an ways that they want to go and hug their friends, and it's really important, that physical connection of how kids learn from each other, right? Means if you are out in nature and you see a pride of lions, the cubs are playing with each other, maybe fighting with each other, the play fight, all those things help them build who they are for the tools what they want to use eventually. For them it's hunting, but for us, kids also learn from each other a lot. So you're right, we should be never losing that kind of an element as such. But I'm just curious about, means I just fell into this 5 weeks ago, uh, and I'm beginning to understand my kids more and their propensity of learning or unlearning. But the effectiveness of online learning as compared to a typical traditional face-to-face learning, is there anything data or I would say attributes about which is better for certain elements as such?
Yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to give you a really, really strong, definitive answer by saying, this research, yielded this results. But from a kind of a meta analysis that has been done by numerous groups around the country, around the world for that matter, online learning has proven to be effective. So that you can kind of take that and move that big question to the side. I think it may be more important to say, is that the best question that should be asked? And I get this all the time from parents and from reporters and people who are not real familiar with online learning. How do you compare online learning to face-to-face? It is highly, highly dependent on the learner and highly, highly dependent on why it is that they're engaging in the online activity to begin with. So I'll just give you a couple of examples or scenarios. So let's just take a 16-year-old student who goes to a Michigan high school, and the student is got a D- GPA, is probably a year behind in their academic credit with their cohort, and has failed every math course that they've taken for the last 3 years. And we take that student and we try to put him in an online math course, maybe with not a lot of instructor support. It's maybe just a page turner, kind of, the kid and the computer and the technology, and I'm going to tell you that student's probably not going to enjoy a lot of success. Now you take that same student and you say, hey, you're really not doing all that well in your studies, but somebody said you were really interested in rockets, or somebody said you were really interested in digital photography, or somebody said you were really interested in being a chef. And you give them a learning opportunity that happens to be available online around one of those content areas where they're actually motivated to learn more about, you might see that student do phenomenal. You take another student who's maybe goes to a small rural high school and wants to be a scientist, or wants, pick a career, pick an occupation, and really, really wants to take AP Physics, or really, really wants to take Latin, and it's just not available at their local high school. And you give that student an opportunity to have access to something like that. That's just, oftentimes those kids are so motivated, they're going to just chew through the online course and they're going to be very, very successful. So the simple answer is online learning has proven to be as effective as face-to-face.
Wow.
The nuance there, though, is it's highly dependent and variable to the individual learner and why they are taking an online or why they're taking a face-to-face. That's the simple answer.
That's pretty interesting. You're right. The ocean is out there. You go there with a bucket, you will get a bucket full. You go with a spoon, you will get a spoonful. It depends on the onus on who is reciprocating it. Also, there are plenty of questions coming in. One question from John is, could we have education delivered online and in class simultaneously after the pandemic? Like how would it look like going forward, or how should it look like going
Yeah.
forward?
So in the industry, we commonly refer to that model as blended, where
Then,
it's not all online and it's not all face to face. And many in our profession have pointed to that as probably the closest thing you could get to the silver bullet. So just case in point, we've got 1.5 million children that go to school every day in the state of Michigan. I wish I could get somebody to give me the answer on this, but I'm just going to guess that on any average day, and today's not average because we're living through, school closures, but on any given day, there's maybe 50,000 kids that call in sick. And maybe there's 500 teachers that call in sick, or they have a doctor's appointment, or something. And we all remember what substitute teachers were like, right? So when teachers call in sick, it's probably not good for them or their kids.
yeah,
And when kids call in sick, it's not really good. So if you were really engaged in a blended environment where, let's say the teacher's doing a lecture that day, or a segment where she can be videotaped, and that can be made available for Johnny or Susie who's at home that day because they have a sore throat, or God forbid, the kid has a broken ankle or is going through chemotherapy. So those kinds of learning environments will have benefit way, way, way beyond COVID-19 kind of, strategies. Last year, there were many school districts in the state of Michigan that had 18, 19 snow days. Now,
oh,
schools in the state of Michigan are required to have school for 180 days.
yeah,
So you get to 18 days, you're at 10% of the school year.
yeah,
Now, I think we've been advocating for, instead of snow days, to have e-learning days for the last 15 years, with not a lot of success. My guess now is that schools have lived through months of teaching remote. A snow day or two is going to be a pretty light lift. My guess is that we're never going to go back to traditional snow days where the kids are just off and there's no learning activity. We don't have to do that. So the blended really, really does hold significant promise.
it's pretty interesting. I hope Calvin is not hearing your discussion or your comment right now. When I say Calvin and Hobbes, Calvin, the one by Bill Watterson, he always painted the picture of looking forward for a snow day. And for me, when I was growing up and going through the comics, it was like I had no idea I was in India what snow day is. But like, if I'm going to go to the school, I wish it has to be a snow day just to enjoy, go back into a park, or go back into a Stony Creek, or something like that. So I hope Calvin, I know Calvin is not listening. Maybe Hobbes might be listening. There's an amazing question over here, which is really amazing. It's from John, might be the same John. Could individualized learning also take into account the sleep-wake cycles of kinds? So many kinds are not morning people. So sometimes early in the morning, the kids' brains might be in a fog. So can this blended thing, online thing, might be a, when I say kinds, it's kids. So the wake cycles of kids. So how, can this help in that element? Because I know, I mean, when I was growing up, I was an owl. I was a nocturnal person. Now I have changed to a lark. I'm a morning person as such too. But how does it help into the sleep-wake cycles of kids?
Yeah, John, that's a great question. I talked about the traditions that live on in the K-12 environment, and if you were a superintendent or a school board member and you wanted to change the start time of a traditional school, sometimes those can be really, really painful community conversations. So, one of the potential upsides of, shifting the learning activities is that you give students the flexibility to engage in learning when it's most convenient or appropriate for them. So some kind of a blended model would completely allow for those kinds of activities. And we already see it right now with the students that we serve, online students. We can go into the system and we can see when the activity is the most heavy. And it's surprising how much activity happens sometimes on a Friday or Saturday night, or on a Tuesday night at 10 o'clock. I think we all have concerns about, especially teenagers and their sleep cycles, but yeah, significant opportunity there to have that be one of the factors at play that would help a student determine kind of their path and their pace.
That's That's pretty interesting. We have one more question from David. I will try to blend that with some setting the stage for that question. When I was growing up, as kids were at that time, most of what I wanted to become, I never said I wanted to become an astronaut, or I never said I wanted to become a fireman. My parents always wanted me to be a doctor, nothing else. This is it. You have to do this. I'm a pretty quintessential Indian family, doctor, and that's it, nothing else. My mom and dad were both doctors, and we always were, I should not say pressurized, but very kindly motivated to always keep that. There is no way out of the normal things. You have to earn your way into it by education and going forward for that. And that's why, even though biology was the main thing, my mom made me take mathematics also, because you have to understand everything to be a, let's say, a learned person. And I'm happy for that. Means I am who I am. I'm not a doctor, by the way, so I still cause a lot of embarrassment to my family. My brother became a doctor. My sister became a doctor. I'm just the black sheep in the family. So the element is there was a way that I believed in that time, and I went, and finally I'm happy where I am. And so looking at that, questions from David is, how early should personalized learning begin to allow students to highly influence their course direction to specialize? Means I knew nothing when I was young. I'm glad my mom took decisions for me. But right now, in this blended world of people can choose the electiveness that they want, that I want to be a chef, I want to do that. So how early that personalized learning should be allowed, or any thoughts on that element?
Yeah, I'm gonna separate course content and the expectations we would have about student achievement and career exploration. I'll be honest with you. I think more than ever before, I think young people have absolutely no understanding whatsoever about many of the careers and occupations that exist today, let alone the careers and occupations that are in the future that many of us can't even see right now. Um, when I grew up, I had 3 television channels, and the thought that there would be a channel someday that was devoted entirely to weather was beyond my comprehension. I couldn't even think of that. Well, I actually think that we should have a career channel, and the career channel could be underwritten by, okay, so this week we're going to look at accountants, or we're going to look at law enforcement, or we're going to look at investment bankers.
Industrial design.
And the companies that employ those kinds of people are going to want their employees profiled during these videos. The day in the life of an engineer at Ford Motor Company. I'm sure Ford would have an interest in having their engineers, profiled. And I just think as a nation, we've really not done as good a job as we could to try to help create excitement, enthusiasm, and give kids an understanding. I think most people don't really know. And unfortunately, many of our school counselors don't have a grasp on what some of these occupations and career. Nobody was telling me when I was young that I should be thinking about, working for an online virtual learning organization. But I think we want to try to, as young as we can, to give kids those career opportunities so that they can get a window. Jivik, I don't know when you created an interest in, the space, environment, but, I have a good friend who's an orthopedic surgeon. He knew at 7 or 8, when he got a little doctor's kit, a toy kit, that he wanted to be a physician. And I know people that are 55, 60 years old that are still trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. So there's no magic answer there, but I think the one constant should be, we shouldn't lower our academic expectations for kids because somebody wants to pursue something in 6th grade that may not require them to take Algebra 2. Because at the end of the day, they need Algebra 2, and then why would we rule out a career or an occupation so young in their educational venture?
Right. You said it. I just enjoyed the analogy, or the suggestion of why not have a career channel. I mean, that's such an amazing thing. We have now channels for everything. We have magazines for everything, but understanding what those careers are, that's a beautiful thing. Means I am an industrial designer and proud to be one, but I had no idea about what this profession is. I stumbled into it. I told my mom, I don't want to be a doctor. I like to make things. I like to tinker things. And she said, okay, that's what engineers do. And I went and became an engineer. Then I went to Tata Motors, and there I saw the styling studio, a design studio. I said, Mom, I want to be that. And then I came back and went to the library and found the courses for design and industrial design, and then applied and did my master's. So you are right, means especially right now, that there are so many channels or magazines. Means you are a runner, right? There are more than half a dozen magazines on running just in the US. There are magazines just for walking. Means it's just one step, a series of falling, arrested steps. But we have magazines on that. Why not for a career, especially in the world of education? That's pretty interesting. We can go on and on. I still want to. We still have time for something that I want you to tell about. But let's take at least one more question, because that's pretty interesting. Could this high-tech approach, let's say blended high-tech approach, can it be more cost-effective compared to today's model?
Well, that's a big question. So I mentioned that we have full-time cyber schools. And in Michigan, every student generates around $8,000, a little over $8,000 of what they call, student foundation allowance. And if a student is participating in, chooses to participate in a full-time cyber school, which we're not, we're a supplemental provider, they would generate the same amount as a student going to, Troy High School. In other states, there have been policies put in place that say if you're going to participate in one of those virtual programs, you're going to get less foundation allowance. And so we've seen a mix. I will tell you that you don't have the infrastructure cost from a building perspective, but you do have significant technology, developing the curriculum that's available online, training the teachers, the instructor cost, and the average school district's costs are embedded in their teaching and staff, 80, 85%. So there are probably some savings, but if you want to do it right, if you're trying to provide the entire educational experience for that young person online, you probably want to supplement that with some things that would be face-to-face that would really round out that person's education that are likely going to have some expenses associated with them. So if you wanted to do it on the cheap, probably. If you wanted to do it with some greater fidelity, probably similar in cost structure.
That's very interesting. And I know we still will have maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes more. I want you to share something that I think will be really useful for our participants over here. Means I think we talked earlier about goal setting, or to-do list settings, or the resolutions, or things you learn and how you use them as guiding principles. Means I think I was talking about, Owen knows this, I try to do plenty of notes. I try to glean off things each and every day and create tomes of this. And eventually now I'm getting time to bring it down into articles as such. But this is still pretty rough. It is. I did not become a doctor, but my handwriting is as good as a doctor. But I see you have a pretty fascinating way to summarize what you learned through a year, and then literally packaging it into a nice artifact. Please take your time, don't hurry up, and just share what you do and just show us something from that perspective.
Well, Jivik, and I think I shared this with you earlier, every year between the latter part of December and early January, I spend a significant amount of time reflecting on the previous year. What did I want to accomplish? What did I accomplish? What didn't I accomplish that I had wanted to? And just trying to analyze. And then I set the sights on the next year and do some goal setting. And so, my 2020, I did that second week or third week in December, last year. And then put in place a plan to try to, make that happen. And I'm a firm believer that, if you write down your goals, and share those with people, there's an accountability factor that just explodes. In fact, just the first time I ever decided to run a marathon, I wasn't telling anybody because I didn't think I could run a marathon. And somebody who was a mentor of mine said, you tell everybody in the world you can. You tell your neighbor, you tell your friends, you tell everybody, because guess what? When you tell them, it's going to strengthen your confidence and you're going to do it. And there is if you want, I can add an interesting fact to that. I'm not as a prolific runner as you. I still run. I do marathons too. There are 3 things you should not do in life, they say. 1, never ask a woman what her age is. 2nd, never ask a man how much he earns. And the 3rd,
never ask a marathon runner his time for his first marathon. So that's how we go. Like, don't ask me time, but I did it. I completed it. Right. That's how you start. So
That is great. That is great. So one thing that I did different this year, and I actually threw it into my slide deck. Let me just see if I can bring it up. So one thing that I did this year that was a fascinating exercise for me, and I encourage anybody else to do it if they have an interest. And I know that this text is very, very small and you might not be able to read it. I can send the text and the image to Jivik and he can make it available to anyone. But I decided to just capture my most important life lessons. And then I put it on this, it's a canvas print that I just actually got a week or so ago. On my favorite place on the planet, which is Yosemite National Park. And, you know, we learn a ton of things in life. You know, early on, you learn not to touch a hot stove. You learn how to tie a shoe. You learn how to put your seatbelt on. You learn how to, you know, pour cereal into a bowl and eat, you know, eat. You learn a million things, right? But then I decided in January to just spend time trying to identify my top life lessons. And so my number one is one person with a good idea can change the world. You know, freedom is not free. You know, write down your goals and share them. Those who anger you control you. And so for me, this is just a little reminder of the things that I learned. And some things I learned really, really easy, and other things were really difficult to learn. And I wish like heck I had learned them earlier in my life. So neat little fun little exercise. I would challenge anybody to, you know, to write down kind of your top life lessons and then sit back and marvel at it.
That's just amazing. Means I do write them down, but I just have a small, simple printout and keep them on my morning mirror glass. But this idea means I do photography also. I don't do landscape. I only do bird photography. But I never merged those two together with such an amazing artifact that you can hang on the wall. That's pretty amazing. And if you can share this, I think we already are getting elements from the chat that people will love to see how you distilled what you learned in your lifetime over there. So my question is, would this change in 2021? Are you going to change it every 5 years or something, or you think this is it?
No, I hope it changes. You know, I'd like to think that we all continue to learn, you know, important life lessons. So, you know, maybe in a couple of years, I'll do another one of these. I've got enough great outdoor scenery shots that I'd be happy to, you know, throw a few more on there.
I like that. Means this is a great way. Means you already answered the question that I ask each and every speaker about trying to share your nuggets of wisdom. I think, and I speak with lots of speakers and moderate a lot of sessions like this. You're the first speaker who just has a concrete, finalized production level kind of nuggets already ready to share. And it was already there on your doorstep a few weeks before that. So that's pretty amazing. Can you read the one that goes to the near of what John Muir said about nature? That's a pretty nice one. Let's try to end on that particular one.
Yeah, it's difficult to stay upset while on a walk in nature.
That is so true.
Yeah.
It's difficult to stay upset.
If you're stressed, if you're worried, if you're concerned, you know, whether it's a health issue or a finance issue or a relationship issue, it's therapeutic.
It's really good. And I think we are just like any other state, but since I am a Michigander, we are blessed with this amazing natural parks in and around us, Michigan and the UP also. And I exactly do that. Not that I'm always upset or stressed, but typically I look forward to a simple hike around a park. I usually have a camera with me. If I get a click of a bird, I'm happy. If I don't get it, even the side effect is just walking in a park. Means what's the best side effect ever? So thank you again. Let's try to, I would say, pause over there, our discussions with you as such, but it was great to have you. Thanks for your time, and feel free to be logged in and be a part of the conversation going forward. But thank you, and we will see each other soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.